we can't tell people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps if we at the same time prevent the boot maker from giving them boots to begin with. And so when you
Here
think
again
about
to
those
discuss part 3 of key components to racial healing is our friend in Washington, D.C., speaker, life strategist, and best-selling author, Michael McGill, Jr. So glad to have you back on the show, Michael.
I really invite folks to join in on these types of hard conversations because they can be messy and challenging and hard and healing, but they're also holy. And we've got to be able to tell the truths to be set free, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Well, and these are difficult conversations to have. And, you know, there's a lot of learning that can be done during this
Yes.
time. So, Michael, tell us about some of the ways that people can have these conversations.
Absolutely. That's such a good question because the reality is that we have to unlearn some of the things we have learned. And so I'm such a teacher, so I like to talk in analogies. And the thing we are living in a society that's dealing with the side effects of the fruit that has been planted, the seeds that have been planted so many years ago. You know, for folks who are quick to say, let's get over it. Well, seeds have been implanted into the ground, and we are still dealing with the side effects of the seeds, which has caused rotten fruit. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. My first request or my first offering for people is to get curious before they condemn. I was actually having a conversation with someone, and she really didn't understand how she was condemning people of color because of their experiences and their plights. And my first request was, before you condemn, get curious. Get curious as to why you believe what you believe. You know, she gave an example. She said, but so many of them don't have fathers in the household. And I explained that goes all the way back to slavery. But what folks don't also know is that there was even a government reform, a government regulation that we would call the one man in the house or one man in the home rule, that for families to be able to qualify for government's assistance and welfare, there could not be a father in the home or else the family wouldn't get the assistance. That's a reality. So not only do we put people and we create systems that put people in ghettos, but we then we impact their ability to be able to rise strong. Another example that I've often taught people is the fact that in many states they have what they call a lockup quota. A lockup quota means that they have a contract, the prison systems have a contract with the states that they must indeed fill beds to a certain capacity. And often that capacity is 90%. That means that this, in my opinion, it impacts the ability to really have a reformed model. We know we can't tell people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps if we at the same time prevent the boot maker from giving them boots to begin with. And so when you think about those lockup quotas, that prevents people. You have these prison companies that even if the beds aren't filled to capacity, they're still getting money from the states. That's a problem for me. Get curious.
And you also say understand your story. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, understand your story. Understand when I'm giving talks to school districts and to teachers and to counselors, I often tell them the power of self-awareness that comes from self-reflection. Like I said, before we condemn, it's important we question, but understand what was modeled for you. Understand the stories that you've seen on television. Understand even your own privileges. And I know privileges that's a very hard word for so many people, but I often say I'm not shaming you or blaming you for being white. I'm not shaming you or blaming you for having privileges. The question here is not so much to be defensive and upset about your privilege, but it's how will you use your privilege in such a way that dismantles and that breaks apart an unjust system and use it to recreate a system that is designed to flourish and promote justice and liberty for all? Will you use your privilege to eradicate? Will you use your privilege to empower and enrich and encourage? Will you use your privilege in the streets and in the boardroom? That's extremely important. Be aware of it and then use it for righteousness' sake. You know, we have to face things in order to be able to fix things, and it really does start with privilege awareness.
All right, Michael, we ran out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and for helping us to talk about these difficult conversations and to get that started. Michael McGill Jr. joining us live from Washington, D.C. And for more information and to continue the conversation, connect with Michael on social media at Michael McGill Jr. You can also check out his website, McGillspeaks.com.